Hello again everyone, welcome back to ptet.chemistry channel. My name is Dr. On, and in this tutorial video I'll go through this 9701 Cambridge International A-Level exam for this June 2015, a quite ancient paper by recent standards obviously. So this is paper 4 variant 2 for this June 2015 exam. So the syllabus has been revamped from 2016 onwards, and it has been further reorganized in 2022. So there will be some stuff in this particular paper that will no longer be relevant to the current syllabus. So just keep an eye out based on whatever curriculum or specification that you'll be doing when you watch this tutorial video. But I will highlight it, whatever is still relevant, I will still go through it for the 2022 specification onwards. In these first questions, we are asked to compare electronic configurations. So these are AS chemistry. These are in terms of these 1s and 2s kind of thing. So this is 2s2 to P5. It is group 17. It's the seventh element in the period number 2. So second period, group 17 has got 7 valence electron. 2 plus 5 is 7 there. Sulfur is a period 3 element, and it is in group 16. So it's 1s2 2s2 to P6. The second row is completely filled, and then the third row is 3s2 and 3p4 because it's the fourth element in the P block as group 16 element there. B part 1, write an equation to show the thermal decomposition of HCl. This is as part of group 17 chemistry from AS, and when you decompose HCl, you're going to get back the element H2 and Cl2. So there's 2 HCl like that. They're not asking for the stat symbol, so we'll be alright to just write a balanced equation. Even when they don't ask for balanced equations, whatever equation you write in A-level chemistry has to be balanced. Now B part 2, this is in terms of using bond energy in the data booklet. I must make it a point that the 2022 specification onward, the data booklet will no longer be a separate supplementary materials, but they will be provided inside the question paper itself. However, not all the data in the all data booklet will be provided in the question paper itself. You can of course see how an example question paper will be like by looking at the sample paper 2022 to see how Cambridge would do and will provide for your paper 4 in the future, or your paper 2 for that fact. This is using bond energy. So if without data booklet, you need to relate bond length. So if the bond length increases because you have more shells, so we are talking about the radius of chlorine bigger than the radius of fluorine. Therefore, the bond strength or the bond energy, the covalent bond energy, is going to get weaker. And we know that because if now I look at my data booklet, which of course at the time this paper was set in 2015, so obviously the data booklet was still available as a supplementary material. So having a look at the data booklet, we will see that the energy of HF is equal to 562 kilojoule per mole, and then we can talk about the energy of the HCl is 431 kilojoule per mole. So we can very clearly see that the HF bond, courtesy of the smaller size of the fluorine, the bond energy of HF is going to be bigger than the bond energy of HCl. So this bond energy of HCl is going to be lower than the bond energy of HF going down group 17. But of course, we're not going to use that. We're going to use this data here. This is probably what you would use in AS chemistry these days, as well as A2 paper 4. So using these bond energy values, why is it more stable? We can see that the HF bond is a stronger bond, and you can relate that, as I mentioned, as it is a shorter covalent bond compared to HCl. So this is then HCl. So HF bond needs more energy to break. If you need more energy to break, you can imagine that HF will be more thermally stable. Alright. As for the next question, we first are asked to define electronegativity straight from AS, and we need to relate that to the concept of bond polarity. They're not looking for molecular polarity, they're looking for bond polarity there, so be careful what the question wants. So electronegativity is defined as the power or the ability, of an atom. So as the power or ability of an atom And what does the atom do? The atom will attract bonding electrons towards itself. So to attract bonding electrons towards itself. All right, moving on from there, then what is the concept of bond polarity then? So if we have a bond, something is wrong there. If we have a covalent bond consisting of two atoms of different electronegativity, consisting of two atoms of different electronegativity, what we can say is that the electrons, the bonding pair of electrons, the localized shared pair of electrons will be closer to the more electronegative atom. The localized shared pair of electrons will be closer to the more electronegative atom. And if that is true, that is basically the definition, the idea of bond polarity. So the bond is polar. So therefore, the bond is polar. The bond is polar basically when you have unequal distribution of electron density. Unequal distribution of electron density is a result of the atoms having different electronegativity. There is a winner in the tug of war, so that the electrons will be closer to the more electronegative atom. More than one way of answering this second bit of the questions. You can talk about unequal electronic distributions, electronic charge as a result of different electronegativity. Then you will get a polar bond, as simple as that. Okay. Now this next question, we have SF4, not SF6. So be very careful, not SF6. So what do we know about SF4? We know that if I draw the display formula, it's actually going to look like a seesaw. So it's like a seesaw where this is like linear, but then this is coming out towards you. Actually, I should have drawn this better. The one outside here should be coming out towards you, and this one is away from you behind the screen, such that you have a seesaw shape. This is a seesaw shape molecule because it has 4 bond pairs and you have 1 lone pair. So quite an unusual shape that you don't normally encounter in A-level chemistry. But back then, in A-level, they can ask you whatever they want. What do they want? They don't want the shape, they just want the dot and cross, and they want you to include all the outer shell electrons. So you don't really get penalized for not knowing the shape, but you do need to know the fluorine form a single covalent bond, and the sulfur share one of its electrons with each of the fluorine. Now you have 6 valence electrons, so sulfur there, dot cross fluorine, dot cross fluorine, dot cross fluorine. And I am a bit lost for word now because I have not enough space. So let me try it again. Dot cross fluorine, dot cross fluorine, dot cross fluorine, and then dot cross fluorine. And because I have only used, let's say, cross for sulfur, 1, 2, 3, 4 for bonding. Sulfur is in group 16. It's got 6 valence electrons. Counting electrons, as student is expected to do that. We still have 2 more electrons left on the sulfur. All the outer shell electrons, do not forget the fluorine still have 6 other valence electrons because you only use 1 for forming covalent bond there. So you still have 6 more outer shell electrons on each of the fluorine there. State whether a molecule of SF4 has a dipole moment. Explain your answer. So this is only for 1 mark. So it is indeed polar. It is polar. So there is a dipole moment. There is a dipole moment. So the molecule is polar because there is 1 lone pair. There is 1 lone pair of electrons on the sulfur. And this result in dipoles not cancel out. This result in unequal distribution of charge. So that means the dipoles do not cancel out. And if the dipoles do not cancel out, therefore, you get a non-polar molecule. Sorry, you get polar molecules when the dipoles don't cancel out. I don't know what's wrong with me here today. So dipoles don't cancel out, therefore you get a polar molecule there. Now what's the next bit of the question? Suggest a reason why sulfur can form SF4 and SF6, whereas oxygen can only form OF2. When you think about SF4, your SF4 contains 2, 4, 6, 8 10 electrons around sulfur. When you have SF6, you have 6 covalent bond, 6 times 2 electrons in one covalent bond. You can have 12 electrons. You can have 10 electrons around the sulfur here. And the very reason is because sulfur is in third period. So sulfur is a third period element. If you are a third period element, you can have up to 18 electrons in the outer shell, because you have, due to presence of your subshells, presence of 3s, 3p, and the 3d subshell. So they can accommodate 2 electrons there, 6 electrons there, so 8. And you can accommodate another 10 more electrons there. So 10 plus 6 plus 2, 18 electrons maximum in the third shell for sulfur. But then they're also asking about oxygen. But oxygen only fills up to the second shell, the second period element. So only 2s and 2p orbitals are available. And as such, you can only have maximum 8 electrons. So maximum 8 electrons in the valence shell. You cannot have more than 8 electrons in the valence shell beyond that. The very next question, suggest a major source, atmospheric sulfur dioxide. Where do you get the atmospheric sulfur dioxide from? They say a major source. So one of the natural source is from volcanic eruption, or you can say from, I guess, only when they erupt that you can get sulfur dioxide. If you say volcanoes, you can get dormant volcanoes or extinct volcanoes, that they are not really active anymore. They're not going to give you sulfur dioxide. You can also talk about from power stations as a result of combusting sulfur containing fossil fuels, but you're not going to get fossil fuels containing quite a lot of sulfur to begin with. So I would say volcanic eruption, the natural source of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, is probably a good bet there. Now, what is the environmental consequence of sulfur dioxide? We know that in AS chemistry, that is part of environmental chemistry. We know something goes on with the SO2 in order to form acid rain. So it can form acid rain. And what does acid rain do to the environment? And that can damage crops. They can make river water very acidic and kills aquatic animals. So they can damage crops and also kills aquatic animals. If you want to, you can write it. I run out of space there. In AS chemistry, you're expected to write a couple of equations to show the effect of SO2 in forming the acid rain. The first of which is the SO2 will gain the oxygen from NO2. So you get another pollutant. This is acting as a catalyst because it will react with this SO2 to SO3, and then you will lose your own oxygen as you undergo reduction, loss of oxygen, and this undergo oxidation, gain of oxygen. It is acting as a catalyst because the NO will react with the oxygen in the air to give you back the catalyst regenerated. So you are not really using up the catalyst at all. In fact, catalyst is not used up in a reaction. Once we have the SO3, this can react with water, and this is your rainwater, and that will give you your acid rain, which is H2SO4. So this is your acid rain. That is your sulfur plus 6, and you get it because you have sulfur plus 6 in the sulfur trioxide. You do not need a V2O5, you do not need the equilibrium, because this happened in the upper atmosphere. This is not in the industry. You do not need to go through via oleum or whatnot. This happened in the upper atmosphere, where these are all in the gaseous phase. Your catalyst is in the gaseous phase, the same phase as your reactant. So this is a homogeneous catalyst as required in the A2 syllabus, A2 case studies under atmospheric productions of SO3 leading up to the acid rain from the SO2 there, NO2 acting as a homogeneous catalyst there. A2 rate of reaction essay. Well, that's the end of the 11 mark AS periodicity kind of thing. So let's move on to the next question.